Guys, welcome back. It is RacerX, and today I'm back with my buddies here at the Hurst Autoplex in Hurst, Texas, and I've got a couple of cars that I want to show you. I actually want to compare these two cars. They're very different, but the comparison should actually be a lot of fun, and I can't wait to show you guys that. Also, if you guys are brand new to the channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button down there below. Also, hit that like button, and we are off. We got the 1,000 horsepower helmet. Okay, so here we have it. Behind me right here, I have got a 2015 Camaro Z28. Yes, I know it's the older body style of the Camaro, but you know what? It's a very, very special Camaro in that it is, of course, a Z28. It's a track car. It's a warrior. And I want to tell you a little bit about this car here in just a moment, but I also want to show you what I'm going to compare it to. Here we've got a Shelby Mustang GT350. And guys, you know what? That is a really, really neat car in itself. Obviously, we know the Shelbys are very special. The way they drive is very, very unique. And this motor is absolutely spectacular. So let me jump into a little bit of the differences between the two cars. So as we know, guys, when Chevy came out with this car, the Z28, it caused a lot of buzz. Yes, it's a naturally aspirated car, but it's very, very special in terms of how the car handles and what it's meant to do. Now, first thing I want to cover is a little bit about the difference in tires on these two cars. And on this car, the black car, which is the Z28 Camaro, you can actually see it's got the Nitto Invo in 305 on it on all four corners. And of course, over here on the Shelby, a little bit different setup. We've got the Michelin Pilot Super Sports, there it is, in 295. So very different tire. Tires are actually made for very different purposes, and as I mentioned, this is more of a road tire versus on the Z28 there we've got more of a track focused tire. So kind of a neat comparison. So another thing that I really want to show you is the difference on the interior of these two cars. Now, the reason I thought this would be a fun comparison is because obviously we've got two cars that are both manual. You got 6 speeds in both cars, but the driving experience is very, very different in both. So I want to kind of show you the inside of the Camaro. Sorry about the sun here, guys, but if you look at the inside of this Camaro, you can see that it is it looks way more rudimentary than in the Mustang. And of course, this is before we did the body style upgrade in the Camaro. But I mean, you know what, there's not a whole lot of stuff going on in here, not a lot of bells and whistles. Let me give you a little better view at it. Okay, so there you have it. That is the interior of the, you got some suede and stuff. You got the Camaro here. The dash is, you know what, not a whole lot of nonsense going on here, guys. It doesn't even have the heads-up display. You can see this is the older Camaro, so it's got just kind of the real flat center console area. But you know what? Everything in here is very business-like and very purpose-built. You can see you do have the Z28, nice bolstering on the seats here, and it does have kind of that nice suede feel with the leather on the outside of it. But it's still a nice place to sit, guys. But we'll look at the Mustang to compare it. And here you have the interior of the Mustang Shelby GT350. You can see a little bit different place to sit. It's actually a much smaller cabin. Similar, this is the Recaro seat that Ford puts in. Similar bolstering on the seats, although this one does have kind of that real nice kind of microfiber feel to it. It does have the suede on the steering wheel, which is very similar. You've kind of got that same almost flat center console. A little bit more of a modern feel in this car, but it is several years newer, so something to be expected there. So, believe it or not, guys, the back of these two cars have a fairly similar look. Like when you look at the spoiler, sorry about the sun again, guys, but if you look at the spoiler here, it's got a real nice shape to it, a real nice kind of a deep lip to it, and it's got of course the quad exhaust down here. Hopefully you guys can see that okay on both sides. And actually the Camaro looks very similar. Let me show you kind of what the back of the Camaro looks like. You've got the same kind of nice deep dish on the spoiler. Here it is. Hopefully you guys can see it. Sorry about the sun, guys, but you can see kind of the nice dish there. And then, of course, once again, you're going to get that quad tip exhaust that we all love. Really, really sharp looking from the back, guys. And I tell you what, this Z28, when you start it, boy, does it sound, it sounds really good. One other quick thing I do want to point out before I actually start piloting these two beasts is check out the brakes on this Camaro. I mean, these things are stout. They're carbon ceramic. I think they're like 15.5 inch Brembo brakes and rotors here. I mean, they're massive, guys. I don't know if you can really see them there, but really substantial brakes on the Camaro. And then of course over here on the Shelby, let's see if I can turn here, guys. On the Shelby, we do have the regular steel brakes, still Brembos. They're still pretty substantial sized brakes here. Really nice looking brake setup. I was just really impressed with how the brakes looked on the Camaro. You do notice a substantial difference in size, and of course the actual the compound of the rotor itself. Okay, so another big difference between these two cars is the aero on the front of the car. As you can see, the Z28 has a monster lip right in the front of it, obviously to kind of keep that car glued down in a track type situation. Whereas on the Shelby, of course, you don't get that. You would get that on the 350R. So this, so maybe the better comparison would have been between the R. We don't have an R here. They're really hard to get. But I mean, just another big difference between the two cars in terms of the aero. You know, this one obviously much more aggressive, very similar to the 350R. Okay, so here's kind of the big thing between these two cars, the difference in the motors. So here we have the Shelby GT350, and this thing is a really, really cool motor. Obviously, we know it's called a Voodoo. It's a 5.2 liter flat plane crank V8 that produces 526 horsepower, and it's like 426 some odd pound-feet of torque. But the thing revs out to like 8,250 RPM, and you can really feel it when you drive it. So guys, it is a very, very special motor, and really, really revvy. It makes for a really unique driving experience. Very, very cool setup that Ford has in here. And conversely, here we've got the Camaro. This thing has a monster naturally aspirated motor in it, guys. It doesn't rev nearly like the Ford does, but it has a lot more torque. It's like 480 foot-pounds of torque, 505 horsepower in this, so not quite as much horsepower, more torque, 7-liter naturally aspirated V8. It is a 427, same thing you got in the old version of the Z06, but it is a very, very neat motor, guys. So it should be a fun driving experience. These two things should drive entirely different, and I can't wait to try them out. One more quick look. You've got the 427 naturally aspirated Chevy motor, and over here you've got the Ford motor, also naturally aspirated flat plane crank V8, 5.2 liter Voodoo, 526 horsepower. Very cool. Okay, so first up, I am actually in the Camaro Z28. As I mentioned, the interior, while it's still nicely appointed, things are kind of where you'd want them to be. Obviously, you know that it's a little more rudimentary than in the Mustang. Everything in this car is very purposely built. But I will tell you one thing that I just noticed about this car. Listen to the exhaust. I don't know if you can pick that up on camera, but this thing sounds fantastic. So I'm looking forward to driving it. So a lot of people are unaware, I actually used to own a 5th gen Camaro in a manual. It was a Camaro SS, had some work done to it, and I actually loved that car. It was a 6-speed car similar to this. Of course, this has the 427 in it, which my other car did not. It had the 6.2 liter motor. And I will say, you know, this car has a really nice driving feel to it. I mean, it doesn't have what I would consider to be kind of the crispest, you know, shifter in the world, but it does feel pretty nice. It doesn't feel clunky at all. The car goes into gear really nice and easy. It's a very familiar place for me to sit because I did own a Camaro before. And I will say that the power band on this car comes in really nice and smooth. It doesn't surprise you. It doesn't get out of hand real easily. It's a nice little car to drive. I'm enjoying driving it around, go around the corner. I'm actually going to give it a little bit of throttle so we can see how it reacts. It's right there. The power's there, guys. And you know, Chevy, they intended for this car to be a well-rounded race car. They didn't intend it for it to be the fastest car on the road. They didn't want it to go out there and compete with the Vipers of the world and stuff like that in terms of just in a dead straight line. Although it does feel very robust in terms of how the power, you know, comes on, and you know, it doesn't feel like you're lacking power. It doesn't feel like a supercharged car, but it does feel nice and balanced, and it really does. I mean, they wanted this car to be a well-rounded car that you could literally take from the showroom floor to the track and just have a really good time with it, and you can feel that when you drive the car. I mean, the car feels nice and planted. It's got a, you know, it's got a fair amount of quickness to the steering here. As you can see, I'm kind of giving it a little bit of steering woe here, and it seems to be doing just great. It feels nice and planted, I guess is what I'm trying to tell you guys. And the car is truly a joy to drive, and it's got plenty of torque. You can feel the torque, that nice 7-liter motor doing work. It's sprung a little bit snug, but it's not uncomfortable. It's not like the ZL1 1LE that I drove a little while back that some of you guys may have seen me drive. But it is definitely stiff, so you can tell that it's purpose-built, but the car is very enjoyable to drive. From a visibility perspective, guys, it's a Camaro. What else can you say? The back windows are small, the door sills are high, nothing's changed. I don't particularly mind it. I think I can see just fine out of it because I'm used to it. But you know, that's always been the knock on the Camaros, the visibility. It is what it is, guys. I don't have an issue with it. But overall, I give this car fairly high marks. I don't have any issue with it at all. I think it feels nice and planted. Is it the fastest thing I've ever driven? No. Is it slow? Not by any stretch of the imagination. It actually wants to break the tires loose a little bit. So the car handles fantastic. It's a fun driving little car, and I think I would rock this at the racetrack for sure. So I'm gonna go ahead and go get in the Shelby now, and I'll compare the Shelby to this, and then I'll give you my thoughts on the two. Okay, so now I am aboard the Shelby GT350 Mustang, and I will tell you immediately, I feel a huge difference just in the way I sit in the car. In terms of visibility, it is better. In terms of just how small the car feels, it feels much smaller than the Camaro does, and it is a smaller car. But you know what, guys? It's a completely different animal. Yes, it is a 6-speed, and I'm getting ready to drive it. But in terms of just the way the car feels around me, even the instrumentation around me, it's an entirely different feel. The seat does feel good around me. Even the clutch feel is way different. So. Well, let's go ahead and put it through its paces and see how it goes. Well, this car definitely is not as loud as the Camaro, but it does have a really nice sound to it. I really like the sound that this Shelby makes. And I tell you what, coming out of a corner and stuff, it inspires a lot of confidence. I mean, the car really, it feels good around you. And I will say, while it doesn't have quite that initial tip-in type punch that the Camaro did, it's close. This thing revs like crazy. Boy, you really feel like this thing could just go to the moon in terms of the way it revs. I'm going to run through the gears here in just a second and kind of show you what this thing is capable of. Tell you, the Shelby really does feel good. I really like driving both cars. But they feel entirely different, I'm not gonna lie. I'm back here on a back road, and I'm just kind of chilling here, but you can just listen to this motor. Listen to that. God. That was only like 6,000 RPM, guys, and this thing has way more there. I just don't have enough room to do it all, but this thing just feels like it will rev until until the thing just blows sky high. Hopefully it won't, but man, it's a revvy motor, and this car is a blast to drive. It's different. Like I said, I like driving both cars. It's a completely different driving experience. This car does feel smaller in terms of handling. It feels planted. It doesn't feel quite as responsive as the Z28 did, but like I said, if you had the R version of this, it probably would. But in terms of this motor, this Voodoo motor, I am a fan, because just listen to it. Oh man, this thing, it is sprung about the same as the Camaro, maybe not quite as tight, but it is sprung fairly tight. But I mean, this motor is just an all-star. I mean, listen to the revving. Wow. this car revs out. I mean, I can see why guys like these, because they just pull so hard. They just pull forever. And I'm used to a car that, you know, wants to shift around 5,500. It's saying, look, shift me. This one, nope. You get to 5,500 and it's really happy at that spot. And it says, you know what, let's just roll with it. So completely different driving experience. It has a really nice bark to it. I'm super comfortable and confident in this car in terms of how it moves, and just a really fun little car to drive. So back when the Camaro Z28 was new, it was over $70,000 for that car, which a lot of people thought was a lot of money. This car, I think, brand new, stickered in the low 60s. So from a sticker price perspective, the Camaro was actually the more expensive of the two cars. But you know what? You feel like you get a lot of money, or a lot of car for the money, really, in both. Just driving them around, they're just a ton of fun to drive. And it is kind of interesting to me that that the Camaro was more money initially, because when you drive them, you know, it's kind of hard to say which one was the more expensive car if you didn't already know. Okay, so I now have the Shelby GT350 back in its rightful place here at the Hearst Autoplex. And I will go ahead and put their phone number down here on the bottom, because both of these beautiful cars are on sale here at the Hearst Autoplex. And I want to kind of give you my final thoughts on these two cars and the comparison. So the Z28 it's a fun car to drive. For a car they intended for race use, essentially, it handles itself great on the street. It inspires a lot of confidence in terms of drive-in. It's very predictable in terms of the way it's going to make the power. And overall, it's just a really nice, solid car. That 427's a great motor. And the Shelby is just a completely different animal. The Shelby feels, I'm going to be honest, the Shelby feels faster to me. The motor just revs like crazy. It really does. Even though it doesn't have as much torque, in terms of the way the thing makes the power, it feels like you're always high in the RPM band, and when you can shift it, you can really feel it, and the car is just an absolute blast to drive. I could daily drive this car all day long and have a ton of fun with it. You could really daily drive both cars. It's not quite as responsive maybe as the Camaro, but it's close, and the thing really responds well. And like I said, if you had an R version of this, it would be even better. In terms of the suspension, I think that they're comparable. I think they're both great. In terms of the feel of the transmission and the shifter, I give the edge to the Mustang. I actually like the feel of the shifter in this thing a little bit better. It is actually it's a fantastic little package, these little 350s, guys, so I actually really like it. So my final thoughts: the Z28 is a fantastic car. I really enjoyed driving it, and I would rock that thing. The Shelby, I'm going to give the edge to the Shelby in terms of what I like, in terms of just driving it around, how much fun it is to drive, listening to it. Yeah, the Camaro's really loud, but the Shelby just makes this crazy sound when it's revving out. And, you know, I'll admit I've not always been the biggest Ford guy, but I try and make these reviews as objective as possible. And I really like the feel that this car gives me when I drive it around. So I'm going to give the edge to the Shelby in this one, even though both cars are fantastic. Hopefully you guys agree with my assessment here. Like I said, if you guys ever want to take a test drive, come on over to Hearst Autoplex and talk to these guys. They're fantastic to deal with. Hope you enjoyed the review. Till next time, RacerX.